I'm going to have a hard time making this a short video, but we're going to cover under rejection criteria, under ineligible location, place, or object. Location, place, or object is temporary or highly unlikely to be permanent. What does that mean? What does permanence mean? This person, it's an ingress player, brings up an important point. Just because you can't access something does not mean that it's not permanent. For example, if you have a Renaissance festival in your town and it's only open maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year, but they have a designated space, anything in there is permanent whether you're there or not. You may not be allowed in there for 7 months out of the year, but that doesn't mean that whatever is in there doesn't stay there. This person brings up goalposts. Are they temporary or are they permanent? I personally see goalposts just as a representation of the soccer field. The goalpost can be removed and it's still going to be a soccer field. This person says that a sculpture that is on a 5-year loan is temporary, but I would tend to disagree with that because, 5 years is pretty long compared to maybe a mural that may be painted over, or maybe a business that goes out of business, or maybe it's something you think may be permanent, but it really isn't. It's temporary. So I don't know if I agree with that one. They bring up the sculpture that's marked as being for sale. I've seen some of these get into the game. I did a video on all the stores that are in the Southwest that sell metal art, and people try to nominate the bigger things in there. Eventually they're going to get sold. They're going to go away. It's temporary. This person, a Pokemon player, brings up an important point that I mentioned in my last video, things that are hanging on the wall of a lobby. And they're saying it doesn't necessarily mean it's temporary because it can be moved. But to me, I see a lot of things that are hanging on walls as temporary because they can be removed. They can choose whether they want to redecorate and move those things. They can move a picture from one room to another. It could be on loan from the owner and the owner can remove it. All these things. But how is that different from a mural that can be painted over? I nominated a mural. It was an artist's house and they had painted their alley with a mural and I nominated it. And then I drove by a couple months later and they had completely painted over it. The first one that I nominated was gone and now there was a new mural. It's still a mural, but it's temporary because they're an artist and they just paint over it. So it definitely shows that this temporary versus permanent is up to the reviewer, but that's definitely an issue. It's very subjective. I'll show you this example that was in the forums. It's a preserve. Somebody's trying to get it nominated, but because it doesn't have a permanent sign, it only has these pieces of paper, they're getting rejected as temporary. And somebody in the comments says you may just want to wait until it has a permanent sign because people are probably going to keep rejecting it as temporary. This one is a person that actually went to the forums and asked advice before they submitted something. It's a shipping container that has a mural on it. They admit to themselves that it's temporary. It's only there during COVID restrictions to block traffic. And to me, I don't care if they said that in the nomination. I would still deny it as temporary because it's a shipping container. You can pick it up and move it somewhere else. This one here, this happens a lot. It's traveling art exhibits, something that is there only a small period of time. It happens in cities a lot when they're trying to drive traffic to cities, give them something to bring them there. And so in this case, somebody's posting, they're complaining because these cherries have made it into the game and they know they're temporary and they show the sign saying that it's only going to be there until September 17th. And then somebody else brings up an important point. Well, some of the businesses may actually buy those sculptures and they become permanent. So you really don't know. But at my local botanical garden, we have things in the game from when there was a Chihuly glass exhibit there like a decade ago. And it's still in game, even though it was only there a year. But still, a year is a long time. And some people don't see that as temporary. And then here, the last example, it's a seasonal display. This ingress player was trying to get it removed from the games and their request was denied, and so they're appealing it. And so they showed, here is the nomination here, It's even showing a bow on the building, definitely a seasonal display. And Niantic came back and said they reviewed the additional evidence and they were going to retire the portal in question. So it's definitely very subjective. Unfortunately, I don't have any solid answers for you at this point. It's up to you whether you think something is permanent or not permanent. But do consider that sometimes you may get art submitted that is just part of a traveling display, and then you have to decide whether you think that should be considered permanent or temporary.